everyone, we are Tu Hương and Wataru. Welcome back to our presentation clip. Our topic this week is about a very interesting case, North and South Korea. So if you follow the news, you may notice that the political as well as social relationship between these two countries is so strained and complicated that it's quite hard for us to fully understand. So through this video, we hope can bring you guys a close insight on the special case of North and South Korea by looking back into history. We have three main parts: the historical context of the war, the Korean War, and Korean today. Let's begin. First of all, it is important to note that all the trouble today began by a war. Yes, another war, the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. Sometimes it's also called the Forgotten War. It can be said that the outbreak of the Korean War made the Cold War in East Asia become more serious. But before going into the actual conflict of this war, let's discover the historical context going into the Korean War. The timeline here will give you a general picture about what happened. So, at the end of the 18th century and the early 19th century, Korea was a part of the Japanese Empire. Another thing needed to say is that this rule is not so pleasant because they apply multiple strict ways, including forced labor, forced prostitution, and try to eradicate Korean language and culture. However, in 1945, Japan lost the Second World War, and then two measures of allies at that time took control of Korea, the North by the Soviet Union and the South by the United States. The occupation force promoted the establishment of two Korean states similar to their own. The U.S. had to establish a democratic state called the Republic of Korea or South Korea, led by Syngman Rhee, while the Soviets had to establish a communist state in their occupation zone called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea or North Korea, led by Kim Il-sung, a communist dictatorship. We can say that none of them is good guys because their competition to get control of the whole nation was the reason for the death of millions of soldiers and innocent people. Both countries, the United States and the Soviet Union, agreed to divide the country into two separate occupation zones at the 38th parallel. Both parties claimed to be the only legitimate government for the whole Korea and tried to deny the existence of the other side. The situation in East Asia was also changing significantly when the civil wars in China ended and the Chinese Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, took the power in 1949, which gave a great boost to North Korea. The young leader Kim Il-sung started the Korean War to solve the problems of division by military means. So, in June 1950, North Korea invaded the South and quickly got control of a great area. The US intervened in the civil war between the two Koreas, with UN forces becoming involved in the first ever UN military action. It is possible because the Soviet Union was absent in the Security Council. So, the US were able to intervene militaries in Korea under the control of US General Douglas MacArthur very quickly and pushed the North Korean military beyond the 38th parallel within a few months as mandated by the UN resolution. The Korean Civil War could have ended there, but despite clear warning from China not across the 38th parallel, the UN force under the command of MacArthur marched across in October 1950. US President at that time, Truman, worried that by approaching the Chinese border at the Yalu River could trigger Chinese intervention. But General MacArthur assured him that China would not respond, and then he led the UN force to the North Korean-Chinese border without much resistance. However, in November, as Truman worried, More than 1 million Chinese voluntary force crossed the border and entered into the North Korea. The action contributed to prolong the war and ultimately made it even more devastating. At Christmas, two sides decided to ceasefire at 30 April. However, President Truman used scorched earth policy, dropping bombs on North Korea in order to force them to negotiate. After 3 years of bitter fighting without a clear winner, but with heavy losses for all sides, after the death of Stalin, the US, China, and North Korea signed the Armistice Agreement on July 27, 1953. So, overall, the current war is a horrific war which took the life of millions of people and made another uncounted number become refugees. Within only 3 years, total 4 million Korean people killed and missing. Most of them were civilians. More than 130 US soldiers killed and another estimated 400,000 Chinese soldiers died. The price of war that all the sides had to pay is too expensive. More than that, all the things that a war left never can tell by words.
So what happens with Korea after the war? Swell of military power in the 1990s. By 1990, North Korea had provided military training to groups in 62 countries, 25 in Africa, 19 in Central and South America, 9 in Asia, 7 in the Middle East, and 2 in Europe. North Korea was a convenient alternative to the superpowers for military assistance. North Korea earned US $3.9 billion from arms transfers to over 30 countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Central America, and spent some US $2.8 billion on arms imports from China and Soviet Union. Purchases included aircraft, missiles, trucks, radars, and command, control, communications, and intelligence equipment. North Korea now ranks 5th in size of its conventional military forces in the world, with about 1.1 million men under arms, comparable to India with 1.1, Russia with 1.2, and the US with 1.4. Military first is the national motto of North Korea, which is ever wary of threats to its ruling regime and still technically at war with Washington and Seoul. Nuclear armed and boasting the world's 4th largest military, it is persistently seen as the biggest challenge to the security status quo in East Asia. Since the early 90s, North Korea has turned its attention to sophisticated weapons systems, including nuclear, biological, and chemical NBC weapons of mass destruction (WMD). In 1998, it successfully launched one Taepodong missile directly over Japan, clearly indicating it had developed sufficient expertise to attack not only Japan but also the USA with NBC weapons. The 1994 so-called agreement framework effectively halted North Korean production of weapons grade field and committed both the USA and North Korea to working towards normalizing relations, making the Korean Peninsula free from nuclear weapons and strengthening the international non-proliferation regime. The collapse of the North Korean economy and ending isolation. North Korea has already indicated its willingness to sacrifice some measure of security to assure greater USA compliance in lifting economic sanctions. The concern with sanctions is due to the convergence of 3 developments: the decline and finally end of sufficient Russian and Chinese economic aid, the obsolescence of North Korea's industrial structure and agricultural disasters party, the policy of normalization advocated by South Korean President Kim Dae-jung, which has brought about the beginnings of a new trade regime and investment opportunities between the two Koreas. It is not coincidental that a year after the Taepodong-1 missile was fired, we see a thorough reassessment of North Korean relations by the USA, the Perry Report, the establishment of a Trilateral Coordination and Oversight Group (TCOG) consisting of South Korea, the USA, and Japan to coordinate their policies towards North Korea. With the meeting of South Korean President Kim Dae-jung and the North Korean leader, General Secretary Kim Jong-il, June 13, 2000, in Pyongyang, more than one myth was dispelled. First, they agreed to work independently and together for reunification, settle humanitarian issues such as reuniting families, promote balanced economic growth for Korea as a whole and across all areas, economic and social and cultural, and to reciprocate Kim Dae-jung's visit to Pyongyang. Korea and United States. As we know now, in the run-up to the January 2009 inaugural, North Korea was already making preparations for nuclear missiles and tests that would occur early in Obama's tenure. In late 2008, Pyongyang's response to Obama's outstretched hand came in the spring of 2009 in the form of a long-range missile test followed by its second nuclear test. This time around, North Korea's message to a new U.S. administration has come sooner and more publicly. Kim Jong-un's remarks were designed to warn President Trump that a more dangerous set of nuclear and missile developments than those President Obama faced await him in the coming months. North Korea had been quiet in response to Mr. Trump's election. The North Korean regime seemed uncertain how to deal with Trump's unexpected triumph. Pyongyang may have needed time to digest Trump's remarks on the campaign trail, where he criticized South Korea defense burden sharing, attacked the Korea-US free trade agreement, suggested Seoul and Tokyo arm themselves with nuclear weapons. This is the end of our clip. So we've gone through three main parts. First of all, the historical environment and before the war. Second, the Korean War. And last, Korea today. We hope that now we all have useful information about these two nations. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。